I think what users want at the end of the day is just something that works. Like if you have a site where a page doesn't load right, or there's no navigation at the top, or it's confusing, I'm gonna exit. But if
Mm.
it's a bare bones site that works and has good information, I'm gonna stay because I'm finding what I want.
Today I'll be talking with Kelsey Jones. She is the Senior Director of Content here at Awesomotive, the parent company of WPBeginner. She has managed the editorial process as well as SEO projects for several top websites, including All-in-One SEO, Affiliate WP, and several other products. And today we'll be talking about 7 simple content ideas that will grow your website faster, something she has a lot of experience with. And then stick around to the end because I'll share with you 3 strategies that you can use that doesn't require creating new content. So let's dive in. So, Kelsey, thanks for joining us today. We get this question a lot, or when I put a poll in our recent YouTube community, what help do you need with your website? And always the 2 number 1 answers that we get are, how do I grow my website? And then also, how do I monetize? And so this is a big topic for everyone. So it's great to have you on here.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
yeah, so I just want to dig in thinking about when a blogger's first starting out, what would you say are the main content pieces or content items that they should be focusing on writing and why?
I think when they're first starting out, having just a good set of starter articles is always good. So maybe 2 or 3 about their product or service specifically. I know when I had my own agency ages ago, I did one post for each of the service I offered right at the start. So something about, the basics of SEO, something about social media marketing. And then I also did content, marketing development. And so those were kind of my pillar articles. And then as time went on, I just delved into the more niche areas of those topics. And it was kind of like a mind map or a branch, just kind of slowly branching out.
Yeah, I like that idea because and I've seen this before too. People will write opinion pieces because they think that that's helpful in sharing, but then that information is not getting picked up by search engines, and so they're wondering why am I not getting traffic? And it's usually because they're doing opinion pieces first, which won't get picked up in search results. So,
Right.
um, yeah, and so I think, do you think that there are some other benefits of focusing on just answering those industry specific questions?
Oh, for sure. I know one thing that we do sometimes at Awesome Motive, and I've done it other places in the past, is if you're searching for your target keyword in Google, looking at that people also ask section, because that's the perfect place to come up with ideas. I know depending on the topic, there's always questions I've never thought of. And a lot of times, just one question is something I could write an entire blog piece on. So that's a good way to kind of elaborate on a main topic or keyword.
Yeah. I love that people also ask section because it also helps me fight against writer's block because I don't know, maybe I
Yes.
don't know what to ask or what to write about, but people also ask is really telling me right there. So very cool. So say you have a new website, and you're working on it. Do you think that there's like a certain number of posts or articles that they need to create within like that first 6 months or first 12 months?
Oh, wow. It probably depends a lot on your industry. Like if you're in an industry that's already really competitive with content, then you're going to want to do a lot more than if you were, like a plumber
Yeah.
like your competitors don't really have any content. For a space that's a little more competitive, I usually say 2 times a week is good to get started. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe 8 to 10 posts in the first couple months. But the bare minimum I used to always tell clients was one a week.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, and so, say that they have done that. They've started writing 1 a week, and they have a certain number of articles, maybe 10, 12, 16 blog posts. Um, Once they have that, what are some other, like, intermediate or other content ideas that they can start to focus on to then grow their website even more? Or maybe help them network with other people in their industry to help grow them faster?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know for me, when I created a little ebook, So it was an ebook about marketing strategy and how a content marketing strategy. And so I offered that as a free download to join my mailing list. And, my agency website at the time wasn't getting a ton of traffic, like maybe 2,000 visits a month. And I got a pretty high conversion rate. I used Opt-in Monster on my site to,
Nice.
get those downloads. And so I was surprised at the number of people that downloaded it. And so I think, thinking about that, is there a little downloadable you could do? Like maybe an ebook. Like I said, mine was only, I think, 20 pages. It wasn't too terribly long.
Mhm.
Or a little checklist. I know for me, when I've been looking at content just for my own personal use, I've loved, downloading checklists. I've been trying to get organized at home. And there was a blogger that she was an organizer. And so she had a checklist for organizing your kitchen, and it was just a printable and you give away your email. But I did it because I loved her content and I just wanted something quick and easy. So anything you could pull out from your existing content, or anything that you could expand upon, either going the short route with like a 1-page checklist or something, or the long route with a longer ebook, I think would be a good step to kind of evolve your process and get you exposed to more people and help you grow your audience as well.
I love that because it also is like for the people who are not quite comfortable with writing a big old thing like an ebook, a checklist, one page will help them, and then people who are very, they don't mind writing a lot. The ebook would help as well. So I love that. One of the first things I did was I actually did a roundup post back in the day, and that
Mm.
worked really well. I reached out to a lot of people, and they shared, they shared the blog post when it went live, and that helped, kind of network as well. I don't know if that works as much these days, and I think it's probably industry specific. But I was wondering what you thought about roundup post ideas. Do you think that those still work?
Yes, but I will say if you're a smaller blogger, you're much less likely to get a response rate, just because, a lot, for the most part, a lot of well-known people in the industry are probably getting those requests all the time. But one thing we did a couple times at Search Engine Journal is, instead of reaching out to people to get a quote, we looked on Twitter and we pulled opinions from people on Twitter about that topic and then embedded the tweet in the blog post. So we were quoting them about the topic, and we were careful not to put anything out of context, and it was nothing like, too controversial or dramatic or anything. But we would just embed their tweet, and then after the piece was published, we would reply to the tweet we quoted and say, hey, this was a great opinion or take or whatever, like a thoughtful comment, nothing that sounded like we just copied and pasted, and then gave a link to the article. And for the most part, everyone loved it. And that was a way for us to kind of build those relationships. I know Search Engine Journal is pretty well known in the industry already, but if you were a blogger that was, looking to do that, just having a really high quality roundup with tweets or Facebook posts or something could be useful as well. Just make sure that the quality's there, because somebody's not going to want to respond or share your stuff if it's not quality. If it just looks like you slapped a bunch of social media posts into a blog post, people can tell, especially people that are really active online or social medias, or someone that you would think of as a thought leader. They're going to know when something's quality versus when it's not.
Yeah, and I like that. And that kind of ties in between that and the ebook of repurposing content. We hear that a lot. And I just want to get your take on what exactly do you think is a good time to start repurposing all the content that we're now creating?
That's a good question. And I know you and I have talked before this episode. I told you to repurpose some stuff. And
Yeah.
that's been something that I've always been a big proponent of. And I don't think there's ever a right or wrong time to start doing that. As long as you're creating content regularly in one area, there is opportunity to be doing it in another area. So even if you just, I'm doing air quotes, like just had blog posts, you could be combining them into an ebook. If you had 5 blog posts about the same topic, could they be slightly reworked to each be chapters of an ebook? Yes. Or if you wanted to do little videos, either just you recording talking more about the topic that you wrote about, or I know there's automated AI tools out there. There was one an old client used, and now the name's escaping me, but we would put in the blog post URL and it would automatically pull out key phrases and sentences from the blog post and create this like animation video.
Oh, nice.
And then at
Mhm.
the end, you could pick and choose, like if you didn't like what they picked or the stock images they chose, the AI chose you didn't like, you could change it. But that's an easy way to get into video too. You just have to make sure, like I've said before, the quality's there. Because I do think because content as a whole and the content marketing ecosphere is so competitive, people are just rushing to get content out there. And that's really not what works anymore. Maybe in the past, just having content would help you get ranked. But now it's all about having the edge where everything's quality because I think all of us who spend a lot of time on the internet know like the difference between like, wow, they really put a lot of thought into this, even if it was a tool they used versus this looks so spammy, like it was, put together quickly. So you can always be thinking of other ways you could translate the stuff you're doing.
Yeah, I love that, and honestly, that's one of the biggest ways that, we grew the YouTube channel is we were repurposing the blog post tutorials into videos to help people out, so repurposing is very helpful, we know that too. One of the biggest pieces of repurposing, it's kinda in the repurposing, realm, but it's really at some point, you start to realize that you need to update the existing content, and so I'm curious, when do you think is a better time, um, to start updating that content?
Oh man. I mean, if you're just starting out, you probably only need to look at it once or twice a year. But if you have a larger scale website, like I would say the tipping point maybe is 50 or 100 posts, then the biggest posts that are getting you the most conversions, if you're doing conversions, whether that's a download or an email address or an actual sale, um, looking at the posts that drive the most conversions or the posts that get the most traffic and fixing if there's anything to fix, like optimizing them maybe quarterly or every 6 months
Mm,
is always a good idea. And that's another thing, how I was mentioning our industry is really competitive now in content. The repurposing, I think, will really give people an edge because I think that's catching on, but not as much as it probably should. And we have someone on our team at Awesome Motive that helps with updates. And well, there's two people now, and that's their main job is helping
oh,
with all the content updates.
right.
So it's really something that I think people need to pay more attention to. Because I think in the past, it was about just pushing content out and you always have to have new, 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 new. And now I think people are realizing, wow, I have 1,000 blog posts and some haven't been touched for 10 years. I've had my website now for 10 years. Those are just like dust, collecting dust. And if they're useful, it makes sense to put in the effort to revise them or even rewrite them and then republish them and do a new publish date once they've been updated. Also, if you have blog posts that really don't serve a purpose anymore, I know at Neil Patel, we did this with all the posts that we had about Google Plus. Since that technically doesn't exist anymore, we took all of those. We created one central post that was called like 10 alternatives to Google Plus, and all of our articles about Google Plus we then 301 redirected to that one article. So because surprisingly, uh, Google Plus was still getting searched a lot. So I think we looked that up in Ahrefs or whatever tool you use. So it still had a pretty good search volume. So that's why we decided to still do a new post on it, but then redirect all our posts to still stay competitive with that. So that kind of analysis and like reworking, I think is really important. And your old post shouldn't be forgotten for sure.
Yeah, that's great, and, just to clarify, a 301 redirect, for anybody who doesn't know, that's where you're taking an old web address or, post, and you're redirecting people to your newer one. It's kinda like with, US Postal Service when you tell them that you've
Yes.
moved and you send them an update, just to give you that. So and I love yeah, I agree, 'cause, the content hamster wheel can get old, and so constantly having to create that new content, um, it feels daunting, but at what point like how old should a post be before you even look at touching and redoing it, do you think?
Oh man. I would say 3 or 4 months at the least, or yeah. Because and it depends on what it's about, right? Like some
Yeah.
stuff changes a lot. Like if you did a post on like crypto or NFTs, I feel like
Yeah.
that field is so volatile right now.
Yeah.
Something 3 months ago might be completely outdated. But maybe like the principles of SEO, if you had an article about that, 3 months from now, it probably isn't going to change that much. So I think it depends a lot about your industry and what the topic's about. But
Mhm.
I would definitely leave it alone at least for a quarter because a lot of times it takes at minimum that long to even see it get indexed, depending on the size of your site. And so I mean, there isn't a definitive answer on this, but sometimes people say like, don't mess with it until it gets indexed and is getting some traffic. And then some people say you need to wait even longer, like 6 months, just so you can see where it ends up in the search results. And that's just all relative. Like I think it's based on experience and
Yeah.
for anyone out there listening, like just do some testing, maybe update the title of one that's not really doing so well after 3 months and track your results in a spreadsheet. That's a big thing that I see a lot of smaller sites and bloggers not really doing is tracking when they've made changes. So even if you did like a Google sheet and tracked like changed the title on this date and you looked at like the traffic or the conversion rate or whatever just to see if it really made a difference. I think that's really important and that attention to detail is something that's often missed. But if you're not tracking that kind of stuff, how do you know if what you're doing is working or if it's all in vain?
Yeah, exactly, and that actually ties into my next question, like, how do you even tell if what you're writing or updating the content, how do you even tell if it's even working? So, you mentioned, Sheets or Excel, but are there other tools that will help you see how things are performing, how your writing is performing?
Um, well, there used to be a tool called ClickFlow, which used Google Search Console, and you could like run tests, and it would kind of automatically tell you. But unfortunately, they're closing.
Mhm,
But other than that, I've used like Google Optimize,
mhm,
is a free tool that connects with your analytics that you can change like titles of stuff. If you were just doing basic stuff like titles or maybe a graphic, you could
mhm,
use that and it's free. Um, or even just knowing what to change. I mean, you want to look at the parts that are driving results. So whether that's the title, because that's going to drive click through from your search results, or the meta description, or like calls to action is
yeah,
something that you could look at a lot. Like if you have a call to action to download an ebook or to go to a pricing page, and that's pretty easy to track because you can look at what were your average conversions before and after. And excuse me, if you're changing something in a title, you could just look at the average result traffic from organic search before and then after.
nice.
Unfortunately, I don't know of another automated tool that kind of does that for you, so if
Yeah,
anybody
I think,
knows, let us know.
yeah, yeah, if anybody knows any other ones, that would be great. But I know, like, with click-through rate and knowing how your title is performing, I know something very basic as Google Search Console will kinda tell you, how many impressions your website is getting and how many clicks that is
Mhm.
getting. So you could do something basic like that just to see, is Google starting to rank and, show your blog posts to people? So I think that that would probably be a good first one, right?
Right,
If we're getting
exactly, and
in.
it's free,
Yeah,
so
love
free
free.
is always good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't show you Google Search Console doesn't show you every keyword that your site ranks for or your post, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
But it will give you some and some data. So better than nothing, I guess.
Exactly, exactly. So many of the things that we've been talking about have been geared more towards writing or repurposing or, basically just doing new content or updating old content. But what do you think are your top strategies for growing a website without that doesn't require writing new content?
Oh, that's a really good question. Um, some things that I did before that helped is I still think live streaming is pretty big.
Mm.
And I used to do live streams for my agency site like once a week, and I would always tie it into a blog post that I had written or a topic I was really interested in. And then during the live stream, I would either into I know Facebook lets you put a URL in the description of the live stream, and I don't know if like Facebook or TikTok lets you do that. Probably not TikTok. But anyway, I did get some visits from that, and I think a lot of the social media platforms like YouTube or wherever else do want users to do live streaming. So they're a lot more likely to show your live streamed videos on their site, like to people who may have not seen it before, instead of just like a regular post. That's just like something I've seen. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
like proven or whatever, but I did get bigger reach with live streams than I would if I like recorded a video and then pushed it out. So that could,
That's really good.
yeah, so that could be a way to really drum up more traffic to your website without, I mean, I guess you're still technically creating new content because you're live streaming, but to me, live
For
streaming is a
sure.
little bit of an easier lift than sitting down and writing a brand new blog post.
Yeah, yeah. Because you probably are just, tying into the things you already know and just sharing what you already know.
Right.
Very cool. So, if somebody does all of these things, do you think that they could see results within the first 6 months, 12 months, more so than if they just sat there and continue to just, work on their theme or, we get a lot of new people who they focus too much on the theme design and the fonts, and then they wonder why their website's not growing. Um, so do you think that this is a much better alternative to just working on the theme?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like just getting stuff out there is probably more important than making your theme perfect. I think what users want at the end of the day is just something that works. Like if you have a site where a page doesn't load right, or there's no navigation at the top, or it's confusing, I'm gonna exit. But if
Mm,
it's a bare bones site that works and has good information, I'm going to stay because I'm finding what I want. So I think a lot of times people with a new website tend to focus too much on like the details instead of actually producing or taking action on something. I'm sure that's what you're kind of alluding to, but
yeah.
that can kind of be to your detriment because, if you are in a competitive space, every time or every day or month you're not doing something, your competitor probably is.
Oh, that's a really good quote. A really good quote for that. So, yeah, take action is the ultimate, goal here, right?
Right, for sure.
Awesome. So, thanks for coming on. Are there any other, like, parting ideas that you might have that maybe we haven't covered on, something that might help them grow their website faster that we haven't discussed yet?
I would say it's always good to look at competitors, but don't ever copy them. So you could look at what they're not doing, and do that. And then also, if you really like a competitor's content or a similar site's content, think about how you could do it differently or how you could be like more detailed or niche than they're doing. So let's say you are a party planner. I'm planning my son's birthday, so this is on my top of mind.
Great.
And instead of just doing a blog post about birthday parties, maybe you could do a series where you did like toddler birthday parties, baby's first birthday, elementary kids, middle schoolers, high school. Like you could just niche it down, and that's six blog posts or however many I said versus just one big blog post about birthday parties as a whole, because those age groups are going to have very different birthday parties. So
Definitely.
just thinking about how you can niche down the content where it's enough content to be its own blog post, by itself. And that's also going to help you in the search results too, because when I'm searching for birthday parties, I'm looking for 4-year-old birthday party, not just birthday party in general.
Yep. Oh, I completely agree with that. I love that final answer. Well, Kelsey, thanks so much for coming on and sharing all of your knowledge with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun.
Okay, now that we shared some content ideas that will help grow your website faster, Here are some strategies and tips that you can use that doesn't require creating new content. And tip number one is interlinking. This simply means that you add a link from one of your posts to another older post. And when you put a big focus on adding that many links to your content, then it also has an easier time of ranking because search engines can start to follow those links. Plus, when you do interlinking, it's completely within your control. Tip number two is when you're creating the content, you're not having to write new stuff. However, you do want to add more images and multimedia. Multimedia can simply mean any kind of embed from like Instagram or Pinterest, Twitter, things like that, or even adding your own YouTube videos or someone else's. A company like Canva realized that visual content gets shared more often. And in fact, articles with images will get 94% more views than those without. So you want to make sure that you add any bits that you can help the reader understand more what your content is about, and images and making the content interesting to read and scan through is an easy way to do that. And in fact, a study on OptiMonster about Canva already knew that images were important, but while they were studying a competitor's most popular content, they were really surprised to see just how many images that competitor used. So Canva decided to increase the number of images on their posts to see if it made an effect for them. And then they ran the entire content experiment for 60 days. And at the end of it, there was a 226% increase in traffic. That's pretty astounding for just adding some images. So take that as something to do, something strategic when you're tired of writing. Go ahead and add some images that are your own and see how that does for your traffic as well. And then tip number three is to create discussions. And what I mean by that is simply to share your items on other social media areas. You can write the content and then share it out with places like Facebook or Pinterest, Twitter, wherever it is that is important for your topic or for your niche. A lot of times companies will see an increase in traffic due to social sharing. All the content that we've talked about will have links in the show notes or description for you. Make sure you check that out. And we'd love to hear your feedback. Let us know other topics you want to hear us talk about on this podcast. And thanks for listening.